Welcome to the klutchkittengaming podcast, where I play an indie game for 5 hours and let you know whether or not it's worth your time and money. Hello and welcome everyone. This is James, also known as Clutch Kitten, and I am so excited because today I am not alone. I'm joined by my good friend Brian Shea, who is coming to us from Minneapolis. Brian, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome, man. I'm super excited to have you. It's kind of an interesting story, thinking about how I wanted to have you on the show. In my mind, it goes back multiple years, but for you, it goes back like a month or something from when I actually asked you. But I first heard about you through the Game Informer podcast because you're an editor at Game Informer. You're on the podcast occasionally, and your name was floating through my head. I was like, okay, Brian would be cool to have on the show. And then I can't remember if it was last fall or earlier this year, you did an article about Kai, or Captain Dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And she is an Instagram creator and does these really amazing kind of mini pictures, like pictures of miniature links and all this sort of stuff.
Like amiibos, Nendoroids, stuff like that. She's incredibly talented.
She is. And so that kind of, you did an article about that, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Brian is kind of picking up from these content creators in the space as well. And then I think the thing that sealed the deal was I saw that you're also a fan of Old Fashioned. So I was like, okay, now I need to talk to Brian to get him on the show. He has to be on here.
And I considered making an Old Fashioned for this recording, but I actually went beer instead.
That is an okay way to go as well. I'm also drinking a beer, so.
Well, cheers.
All right, so since me talking about who you are is probably a lot more boring to the listeners, let's start out with learning more about you. So, Brian, who are you today? Super simple question. Who are you today?
Man. I mean, I think that I'm somebody who has a passion for video games, for music, for sports, primarily mixed martial arts right now. But also I like football. I grew up loving baseball. I love my cat, who is laying right at my feet right now, rolling around. And, you know, I kind of grew up hating writing, to be honest. I hated writing and running. And if you told me when I was a kid that I would run really regularly and lose a bunch of weight from running because I wake up super early to go run before every day at work, or that my job would be writing and I would absolutely love it, I would tell you were insane. Because like, I think that like a lot of people in school were forced to read certain books or were forced to write certain prompts, and it's not stuff we're necessarily excited about. And once I think that the thing that clicked with me, and I know this is going off on a major tangent very early, and that's probably a bad omen, but the thing that clicked with me was I think I grew up a diehard Orioles fan, Baltimore Orioles in baseball, and Cal Ripken Jr. was my favorite player. And I remember we got to write a biography of like a person of our choosing, and I wrote a biography on Cal Ripken Jr. and I was like, oh, that was actually fun. And it was like it like kind of clicked with me. And then it was, of course, right back to like the deluge of school assignments where it was like, all right, analyze this book that you hated reading. And it's like, all right, this isn't fun anymore. So I kind of fell out of love. Yeah, I fell out of love with writing for the longest time. And then like in college, I started running a music website on the side of my job, because I was a resident assistant in college, and I needed something to pass the time. So I was just sitting on like the desk duty like 2 or 3 nights a week. So I needed something to pass the time. So I started writing about music in my office hours, and it was super fun. I got to connect with a bunch of musicians, and then kind of branched over to the video game space, because I grew up loving video games even longer than I grew up loving music. And I branched over to the video game space through Guitar Hero and Rock Band, because it was just the perfect timing where, I had all this experience writing about music, even though it was low level experience on like a small website. But had all this experience and fun writing about music. So I was like, oh, I bet I could write about music video games. It kind of ties in. And then I branched over to writing for a small site about just like a regular video game site, like a general video game site. And then it just kind of, I founded my own site after that, and then started doing freelance for like IGN, Kotaku, Official Xbox Magazine, Joystick, Games Radar, and then finally, I was hired on at Game Informer. And that didn't answer your question of who I am today, which I guess, the short version is I'm the digital editor of Game Informer. I run the digital version of our issue, or I oversee
Yeah.
it from an editorial side.
Yeah.
And I love video games. I love my job. I love. I'm very lucky to be able to do a lot of stuff that I love. But it felt like an eternity to get to this point, and I'm
Yeah.
super glad that I stuck with it, because there were several times where I thought I was just not cut out for it, or like I'm never going to get to that mountaintop, where it's
Yeah.
like I wrote for free for essentially 6 or 7 years before, or I guess 6 years before I started doing paid freelance, and then finally getting a full-time gig. It was just like, all right, is this ever going to happen? So I think that kind of all contributes to who I am today, which is somebody who is grateful for what he's able to do on a daily basis, and also somebody who loves what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said you didn't really answer the question well, but I think you answered it very thoroughly. I like when people talk about all these different facets of their life. I'm curious about, you mentioned mixed martial arts as well as running every day. What helped make that transition from you as a kid being like, I never want to run, I don't want to do this, to like today where you're working out, where you're getting into mixed martial arts and all that sort of stuff?
It was really like once I got out of college. So I lost a lot of weight in college. I was always kind of a chubbier kid growing
Hmm.
up. And I lost a lot of weight my freshman year of college because I didn't do so well my first semester. And my
Hmm.
second semester, I was like, I've really got to like get my act together, because I'm going to like get crappy grades. So I just put my nose to the grindstone. I think that's the saying, right? I don't
I
know.
think so. Yeah.
I
I
kept my
don't
head
know.
down in my studies to the point where I was like getting everything done like weeks before it was due. But
Oh
I
my word.
also did it to the point where I was forgetting to eat meals. And I
Yeah.
was also taking all like the elective like gym courses, because like even though I was like a chubbier kid growing up, like I loved gym class all throughout high school, just because I loved playing sports. So I took every gym class I could in high school, and then a few times throughout college.
Hmm.
So I was working out, I was running a little bit, and just not eating that much, which
Yeah.
is it's not the best way to lose weight. Let me put that disclaimer out there. But
Like the anti-freshman 15 or whatever.
yeah, I lost the freshman 15.
Yeah.
So, but then I gained it back a little bit as college went on. I kind of figured out like how to balance everything.
Hmm.
And then when I got my first office job, I just poured on the pounds, because you're getting paid decent amount of money. I got hired as a computer consultant at a Fortune 500 company,
Hmm.
and I was contracted to a client in Pittsburgh, and it was decent pay and a really like tight knit team dynamic. So we were going out to eat almost every lunch. We were doing a lot of happy hours in the evening. And of course, we're working 10-hour days where we're sitting at our desk all day. And like you get up to walk around a couple times, and somebody would bring bagels in every morning. So I put on probably like 30 pounds once I got
Hmm.
my first office job. And I remember I took a picture, and the picture was with comedian Jay Moore. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
stand-up comic, really funny guy. But I took a picture with him, and I remember I looked back at it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I my head is enormous. Like, what happened?"
Mm,
And like I just had to take like a kind of a long look at myself and be like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore." So
yeah.
I set my alarm. So I had to be at work every day at 8 a.m. And so I would leave at 7 to get to work. So I set my alarm for 5:30 instead of 6:30, and I'm like, I'm just going to run
Oh
one
man.
mile in the morning and before work. So I started doing that, and
Hmm.
like I was like, all right, I'm gonna the next step was I'm gonna start eating better, or like packing my lunch or like 3 out of 5 days I would pack my lunch. and all right, no more bagels. So I got rid of bagels. Then eventually, no soda unless like I'm eating out because I didn't want to drink water at a restaurant for some reason. And then it was no soda whatsoever.
Hmm.
And it just and then like 1 mile became 2 miles, and 2 miles became a 5K, and then just as you do, you progress in your diets, you progress in your exercises, you get stronger at things, and it got to the point where I was running pretty much every day, and I lost a lot of weight. And then when I moved back to Baltimore, I actually lived right down the street from a Kenpo, which is like a street fighting variation of karate. It was
Okay. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, so it's like an Americanized version of karate with like an emphasis on like just kind of surviving in like a street fight. And actually, it was founded by Elvis's bodyguard. And
Really? What?
and I was learning under the one of his grandmasters that he trained after founding the martial art.
Interesting.
So I started taking that, and they had a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class. They had like different weapons classes that I took, which was fun.
Hmm.
And then so like kenpo, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and then I learned how to like combat knife fight, and I learned how to cane fight, which was really interesting because
Cane
combat
fight.
knives, you're like, okay, yeah, I could figure out how to do this, but like cane fighting, like you kind of like like an old man cane, almost like with like the kind of
Yeah.
the semicircle handle, and like you can like put it on your finger in such a way that you almost like whip it around your body. It's really cool.
I'm just starting to imagine you in like a Yakuza environment or something with all these like swinging around a chair or a
Picking
bicycle
up
or something.
bicycles,
Yeah,
yeah. Um,
exactly.
and then I moved to Austin, Texas, which I absolutely love. I would move back there in a heartbeat. But there was
Yeah.
a kickboxing place. So it was a karate school, and then there was a kickboxing facility right next to it. They were conjoined, and got really into that. And that was in the best shape of my life. And I was also going through a really hard time in my life. Like I had broken up with a long-term girlfriend at that point. I was in a
Hmm.
job that I absolutely despised. So I wasn't eating particularly a ton of food.
Yeah.
And when I was like really health conscious at the time. So I was eating like salad with salmon and walnuts and stuff. So it was like pretty healthy stuff. And also, just being in Austin in the middle of the summer, you're just dying of
Yeah.
like you're
Yep.
drenched in sweat. So you're losing weight that way as well, like the water weight.
Hmm.
And I just got in like the best shape of my life. And of course, like as soon as I was like, wow, I'm in like really good shape, I sprained my ankle the next day, like
Oh
severely.
no.
And yeah, I ended up spraining both ankles.
Oh
Uh,
my god. What? Shoot. Oh man.
and then, I've had a hard time finding a spot up in Minneapolis that is reasonable for mixed martial arts.
Hmm.
Like there's actually a world renowned mixed martial arts gym. Like it's the place where Brock Lesnar trained when he
Okay.
was fighting in the UFC. It's produced a couple of other UFC champions. And I've toured the facility twice. I've taken one private lesson there, but it's like $230 a month, and I'm like, no way,
Ooh.
dude. I just
Yeah.
can't swing that. Like, especially when I was paying around $100 a month for the stuff in Baltimore and Austin,
Yeah.
and then so I hired a private instructor for like for boxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that for a little bit, and yeah, I've just kind of kept up with it. And as far as like being a fan of mixed martial arts, like watching it and everything, I actually watched like one of the very first UFCs live, like not in the audience, but like on pay-per-view. It was like we had a family get together, and my uncle ordered it just on a whim, like, oh yeah, there's no rules in the fighting. Like, this is like UFC like 3 or 4 or something like that back in like '95. And yeah, it was just super cool. And like I kind of like came in and out of being a fan like over the years, because I was a kid, I didn't have access to pay-per-view. So
Yeah. It's kind of
I kind of
expensive.
like, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to convince your parents to do pay-per-view for basically what at that point was just like no rules cage fighting.
Yeah.
uh and thankfully now it's like a lot more like regulated and everything. And but now that I'm an adult who can make his own decisions and buy his own things, I've just fallen completely in love with it. It's just awesome. Like, I don't know, there's a big pay-per-view tomorrow night. We're recording this on Friday the 4th, and there's a big pay-per-view in Australia tomorrow night that I'm really looking forward to. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's again another long-winded answer, but You asked for it.
No, it's good. I think that's super inspiring because I think I feel like there's a lot of people who go through that exact experience that you talked about, where it's like you get out of college, you go to a desk job, or at least maybe I'm saying a lot of people feel this way because I feel like I went through the exact same thing where I went to a desk job, and it wasn't until I left that job a couple years later that I looked back at pictures of myself and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, man, I gained quite a bit of weight while I was there. Same sort of thing, going to beers, having the bagels, going out to lunch,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until a few years back where I was like, okay, I need to start going to the gym and actually being intentional about being healthy with this sort of stuff. Something else that came to mind when you were mentioning the MMA was in the gaming industry. Is there a trend with people who love wrestling and MMA? Because maybe I listened to too much of the Giant Beast cast with Dan Reichert talking about wrestling all the time, but is is this a normal thing for people in the industry, or is it just kind of like the pockets of people who I'm listening to?
Um, there does seem to be a pretty high ratio of prominent video game personalities who love professional wrestling. I'm actually not a professional wrestling fan. I loved it when I was like in middle school and early high school, but I kind of fell out
Hmm.
of it. And I actually got to go to the Table Ladders and Chairs pay per view when it was here in Minneapolis, just because I always wanted to go to one as a kid.
Yeah,
So I went to one with some coworkers, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I just haven't followed it. I know like a few of the names, and I know a lot of like the big ones, mostly from like, all right, oh, that's the cover star of WWE 2K, or following people on Twitter, because a lot of people, like you said, do talk about it. So I mean, that's kind of the extent that I have. But yeah, it does seem like there's a higher ratio of wrestling fans, professional wrestling fans in gaming than like if we were in like the baseball
yeah,
community, I don't think there'd be as high of a fan base there.
probably not. So you've already given us a lot of information, but I'm curious, where kind of did your gaming journey start? So going back to you as a child, what got you into gaming originally?
Well, I went over to my aunt and uncle's house. This is a story I've told a few times on GameInformer.com. I've written some personal articles about all this stuff. But I went over to my aunt and uncle's house during a family gathering. It was probably like Easter or Thanksgiving or something like that.
Hmm.
And, as tends to happen in a lot of these get togethers, like the little kids disappear into the playroom or whatever while the adults all kind of hang out. And for us, it was the basement. And I went and I was like, oh, what's this? And I looked, it was like a Nintendo. It was an NES, and they're telling me like, oh yeah, it's a video game. You play it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I had like a like we had like an Apple computer or something like that, and we had like
Yeah.
Avoid the Noid or something on it, and like some stupid like Sesame Street game. And I was like, oh yeah, I've played video games before. But then like they fired up Super Mario Brothers, and I was like blown away. Like, oh my god, what is this? Like, it was just
Yeah.
incredible. And then they had Duck Hunt, they had Tetris, like all so many like the greatest hits.
Hmm.
And I was just in love with it. And I remember like the next few times we would hang out with my aunt and uncle a lot. So like every time went over there, I would just disappear into the basement. And then one day I came back. I think this was probably like a few months after I first got introduced to it, and it just wasn't there. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we sold it."
Oh
And I
no.
was like, "What?" And then so like, yeah, we sold it. We have to do other things. So I was like, "All right." And so I just kind of moved on. And then like years later, they told me they didn't sell it. They actually hid it when I came over, because whenever I came over, it wouldn't like they would never see me or get to hang out with me. They would I would just go
Oh
play
my gosh.
Nintendo.
How many
Uh,
years later did they tell you
it
this?
was probably a couple years, like maybe like I was like, oh my god, how old was I? I was probably like 5 or 6 when this happened. They probably told me like when
Okay.
I was like 10 or 11.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's crazy.
So yeah, I mean that's how it started. I never owned an NES, but I did get an SNES with Super Mario World as a kid for Christmas. That was my first console I ever owned,
Mhm.
and just obsessed with Super Mario World. I got Mario Kart as well, and then I got Mario Paint, which was so much fun, so unique. I still wish they had like a way to play it today. And then Donkey Kong Country was like a game changer. I got that the following Christmas, I think, after, or no, there was 2 Christmases later. I got Donkey Kong Country for SNES for Christmas. And so I played Mario World, Mario Paint, Donkey Kong Country, and Mario Kart like constantly with my dad. And that was just a really great way that we bonded. He traveled a lot for work, so it was always
Hmm.
like an awesome way to like spend time with him and like,
Yeah.
do something that we both enjoyed, even though like I think he started out of obligation of like, oh, he likes this and he can't beat all the levels, so I'll beat some of the levels for him. And then he started loving it as well. Um,
Yeah. That's really you actually wrote an article kind of about that,
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the articles I was talking about, where it's just kind of like a personal essay, essentially, of like,
Yeah.
because now I'm the whole point of that article was now my dad, who didn't play video games from like N64 era until today,
Hmm.
he wanted to get a VR system, so I recommended him getting a PSVR, which requires him to get a PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
And I told him that because I was like, well, that's the out of the 3 major VR systems, that's the one I'm least likely to like be on Saturday tech duty
Yeah,
for,
that's true.
or tech support duty. So I told him to get the PlayStation VR. They've been really good about like figuring out all the stuff. They had questions obviously about setting it up, but like he's bought other like I think the PS4 came with Uncharted 4, and he played that. Like he just played like the first few hours on repeat basically,
Yeah.
which is fine. And then
Yeah.
I got him Overwatch one year for Christmas, and we played that a few times. And then
Hmm.
I got him God of War last Christmas, and he's been playing that. He hasn't played it that much lately because he's been traveling again for work.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's been really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, I bet. So what kind of after the SNES, what did it look like for you kind of then?
Well, a few or probably less than a year out of after getting an SNES, my dad got a job down in Florida. We were living in Maryland at the time, and my dad got a job down in Florida, and we were like, oh, well, we're gonna temporarily relocate to Florida. So they put their house up for sale, and it sold like immediately, like way before they they thought it
Oh
was going
my.
to.
Yeah.
So we packed up all of our stuff and we moved in with my grandparents, who lived like a couple counties over. So it's like we don't have our house down in Florida yet, so we have to live with them,
Hmm.
and then just they would drive me to school every day. Uh, Unfortunately, that meant that they packed everything up hastily, and when they put it in my grandparents' basement to like just store until we moved down to Florida, like 3 months later, uh, the SNES got put in the way back,
Oh no.
and so they were like, all right, well, we already took him away from his friends. He doesn't live in like the neighborhood anymore. We took him, and now we've taken away his video games. So it's like we have to buy him a new system, I guess. So that's where I got the Sega Genesis. They took me to like I think it was like BJ's Wholesale or something, and we got Sega Genesis, which came with Sonic 2 and Echo the Dolphin. And that's where the whole love for Sonic the Hedgehog came in for me. So I
I was
loved
just
Sonic
about to
2.
ask that.
Yep. So I played Sonic 2 a lot. I loved it, and then I just got obsessed once I got Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, and like
Hmm.
I don't know, that also started a weird thing of like I like kind of like long sagas that all kind of fit together, like because I
Hmm.
loved that
Yeah.
Sonic and Knuckles, if you put the Sonic 3 cartridge on top of Sonic and Knuckles, it was one long story consisting of all the levels from both games.
Huh.
So
I
I
didn't realize
like
that.
Yeah, so I like that I like I don't know, I just became obsessed with the idea of like, oh, it's nice to have like one game where it's like the entire story of this arc that they're telling
Yeah.
in these two between these two games. And I don't know, like that's always something that I've really liked, like games that like like Hitman right now, for example, like you can
Hmm.
import all the levels from Hitman 1 into Hitman 2.
That's very
Uh,
cool. Yeah.
and it's awesome. Like it's great having everything like that. Like I always thought it would be cool. Like I know there's different mechanics in different games, but like when a new Call of Duty comes out, if you could have like all the levels that you have from the past Call of Duties, import them in. Like Rock Band was a great example of that, where
Hmm.
you could import your songs from past games into that, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. It was like an adventure that you could go revisit the old stuff, or you could just enjoy a steadily growing library of either new levels or new songs. But I think that was a big part of me, like just loving Sonic, and like it gave you that whole like attitude that Nintendo didn't have, which was basically the the whole point of their marketing campaign at that point. And then from there, what did I get? I guess I got the N64. I started saving up for the N64, and I got a bundle with, I think it was Mario 64 and San Francisco Rush,
San
which was
Francisco Rush.
it was a
Okay.
very weird bundle.
Yeah.
I think that what I ended up doing for that actually was my parents had like a Diners Club card, and they had
Hmm.
all these rewards points built up, and they didn't know what to spend them on. And they're like, "Hey, if you give us like, I forget how much it was for an N64. Say it was like $250 or $300 or something like that.
Yeah.
If you give us that money that you've saved up, we'll use our rewards points and buy the thing for this, because I guess it came with an extra controller if we did it that way."
Oh, okay.
So I did that, and yeah, loved the N64. It was just such a great like party system.
Yep.
So I mean, it hit me in the right time of my life, where it was like I was in middle school when the N64, like oh, it was like late elementary, early middle
Hmm.
for the N64's lifespan, and it was so great being able to like go to like sleepovers with my friends. We'd
Yep.
play GoldenEye 4-player, we'd play Mario Kart 4-player, we'd play Star Fox 4-player, and it was just so great, like doing all that. And like it was also a whole new world, because you have 3D games, you have 4 controllers, some stuff that you'd never seen before.
Yeah.
So that was great. I mean, I adore Mario 64, Mario Kart 64. Even though it gets a bad rap today, I think that just the nostalgia factor carries Mario Kart 64 for me.
Totally. Yeah.
Uh, and then Ocarina of Time, which for the better part of 20 years was my favorite game of all time.
What
And
changed? What changed that over? Was it Breath of the Wild?
Breath of the Wild dethroned it.
Okay. Yep.
Although there was a brief period where Final Fantasy X dethroned it, and then I went back and played Ocarina of Time. I'm like, no, no, this is the best.
Quick tangent.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who hasn't fully completed any Final Fantasy, and I'm trying to figure out the best place to start. Would you recommend? Because I've looked at 10 and 10.2, and it keeps being on sale on the Switch. Is that a place you would recommend starting, or what would you recommend?
10 was where I started with the series,
Okay.
and I think it's one of the most accessible Final Fantasies.
Hmm.
It also has a fun story to follow along with, even though a lot of people say Tidus, the protagonist, is annoying as hell, which I can't argue too much with, but I have a soft spot for him. The character Auron in that game is a total badass, so I have a figure of him on my desk at work, which
Nice.
I spent entirely too much for, because Final Fantasy X merchandise is super like not available, which is weird. So I actually had to go on eBay on one of those days where they like had like a code where it was like, it's valid only today. You get like 20% off your entire purchase. And I was like, I'm getting that Auron figure. So
Totally.
yeah, so I think Final Fantasy X is a great spot to start. 15
Okay.
is also a really great spot to start, even though I know a lot of hardcore Final Fantasy fans will probably yell at whatever device they're listening to this on,
Yeah.
just because it's so different from the rest of the series, and it's
Hmm.
kind of made with accessibility in mind. I think that like accessibility in the sense of being like approachable, I think is probably a better word. I know accessible is often talking about uh like disability
Colorblind mode,
community,
or
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But I would say approachable. It was designed with approachability in mind. I think it even said like a
Hmm.
Final Fantasy for those who've never played Final Fantasy or something like that, was like what the director
Interesting.
said. But
Okay.
I mean, as somebody who has played every Final Fantasy, or played parts of it at least, I never got into 12. Every mainline Final Fantasy that isn't an MMO, which excludes 11 and 14, I've played all of them with, and I think that 15's a blast. It's one of my favorites in the series. It's definitely one of the better modern Final Fantasy. I think that it's better than the entire 13 trilogy, even though I think I also like those more than most people. So maybe I'm not the best judge.
It's okay. Everyone can have their opinion about it.
Yeah,
It's fine.
but I mean, Final Fantasy X is one of those games where I own it on almost every platform it's available. I own 2 PS2 copies. I don't know how I got that second one. Um, I own it on Switch, which I haven't started. I own
Hmm.
it on PS4, which I beat it on that. I own it on Vita, which I beat it on that. I almost want to buy it on Xbox just to say I have it on that. I don't have it on PC either, though. So
Is there any reason to play X instead of X2?
yes.
Okay, what? Tell
So
me why.
10-2 is a markedly worse game. And also,
How?
the story is a continuation of 10, so you're going to be completely lost if you just start with 10-2.
Okay, that's good to know. I had no idea.
Yeah, so there are direct sequels very rarely in Final Fantasy. Like 10-2 was the first direct sequel. Like that's actually like a mainline RPG. Like obviously 7 had a couple of sequels, but they aren't really like mainline RPGs. Like this is like continuing certain conventions of Final Fantasy 10
Okay,
into 10-2. And then 13 has a whole trilogy. So and
gotcha.
then I guess, I mean, I don't know if you want to consider Final Fantasy 15 having sequels, but like they released episodic DLC, but it was more like plugged into the
Okay,
flow of the narrative. Like it told the stories of what certain characters were doing during while they were away from the protagonist.
gotcha.
Um, so I guess that doesn't really count, but yeah, just Final Fantasy X is just a much better balanced experience, and yeah,
Okay.
again, you will have no idea what's going on in 10-2 if you don't play 10 first.
I'm showing my ignorance with asking that, but that's super good. That's super good to know. So coming back from the tangent I took, you said Ocarina of Time was like your favorite game for 20 some years.
Mm-hmm.
How could you move on from that? How could you keep gaming from that after it was this amazing experience?
Well, the N64 kind of ran its course. I mentioned games like Star Fox and GoldenEye and Mario Kart and 64 and or Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. And one day, at another one of these family gatherings, my cousin brought over his PlayStation, and he had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And I was just like, I played it for like 2 or 3 hours with him and was completely obsessed with it. And
Yep.
I'm the kind of person that once I set my mind to something, I am just like, I mean, we kind of touched on that with like the exercise
Hmm.
or getting to uh, where I am in games journalism and games criticism.
Hmm.
Just once I set my mind to something, it's just like I obsess over it, and that happened with me with the PlayStation. Once I played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I was like, "This is unbelievable. This is so much fun. Everything about this is unbelievable. I just can't wrap my mind around how great this is."
Yeah.
Uh, and it was, again, it was one of those things where it was unlike anything we'd ever seen before, and I was like, I'm buying a PlayStation just for this game. So I got a
Yeah.
PlayStation. I traded in my N64 actually to get a PlayStation. I think it was like
Hmm.
a Funko Land or something I went to and traded in my N64 and all its games. And I think I had just enough to get a PlayStation with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And the PlayStation came with Spyro the Dragon. And
Okay.
then I got
Yeah.
an off-brand memory card. I can still see it. It's like one of those like clear or like translucent green memory cards, and it had like that switch on top where you could like be like, all right, I want to use memory card 1 or memory card 2.
That's such an interesting memory, just specifically the
Yeah,
off-brand
and I remember
memory
I
card.
used it for my PS2 because if you wanted to play PS1 games on your PlayStation 2, you had to plug in a PS1 memory card into it. So I think that's maybe why it stuck out so much, is that it's like, all right, I have this all black PS2 and it's just a bright green translucent memory card on like that whenever I played a PS1 game. And that's speaking of Tony Hawk, that's another game that I found that had like one of those like compilation style games where you could get, I think it was called Tony Hawk 2X on original Xbox, where it gathered all uh, the levels from Tony Hawk 1 and 2 into one game. Because there was no Xbox system to compete with the PS1, so they just kind of did like a compilation release in one game. So it's like, all right, I want to play Hangar on Tony Hawk 1 or Warehouse in Tony Hawk 1, then I can jump over and play this other skate park in Tony Hawk 2 without having to like load a different game. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever.
That is cool.
So I mean, it just played into that further, that I was talking about
Mhm.
with like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But yeah, so Tony Hawk 1 just blew me away. I loved it. And then I think that I didn't. Oh no, I bought a PS2 for just because it was like the next thing to get, and there
Yeah.
wasn't really a game that I desperately wanted, so I think I got it a pretty close to launch PS2 with Tekken Tag Tournament,
Tekken
and
Tag Tournament. Okay.
yeah, I spent a lot of time in arcades growing
Yeah.
up. That was usually the reward. Like if my mom, like during summer break, if my mom took me out to the mall, like to go
Hmm.
shopping, and it's like if you be like when I was a really little kid, it was like if you behave, you'll get like a Ninja Turtle figure. But like then it was like if you behave, you'll get $2 in tokens at the arcade.
That's a good reward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. So I would play like Simpsons arcade. I would play
Yep.
play Ninja Turtles arcade and all those
Hmm.
games. And I loved like the fighting games like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. When my mom wasn't around, I could play that. So yeah, so like Tekken Tag Tournament, I'm like, oh man, that's an arcade game that I can take home, and it like looks good and it plays good. And I remember liking whenever I went over to my neighbor's house, I liked Tekken 3 on PS1. I don't think I ever owned Tekken 3, but like I
Hmm.
would borrow it constantly from my neighbor and just play it, uh, just trying to get all the endings from all the characters and unlocking all the secret characters.
Yeah.
Um, so Tekken Tag Tournament, I was like, great, I'm going to finally own a Tekken game, and that I think that was the last Tekken game I ever liked because I just don't really like the Tekken series anymore. And that's nothing to say about like the quality of those games. It's just I think that
Yeah.
I've moved on from like most 3D fighters. I think the only 3D fighter that I still really like is Soul Calibur, but even that, like the Soul Calibur 6, I was not a big fan of. I think just like 2D fighters are mostly superior.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the renaissance it's having now with like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and like all the indie fighters that are coming out. Like there's just so many great 2D fighters, and when you play them one after the other, it's like wow, it's usually such a tighter experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Um,
lot cleaner. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean that was the PS2. I that's where I fell in love with Final Fantasy X. But like I played a lot of sports games. I really started liking oh, and there was a Dreamcast in between there as well. Completely forgot about that. That was another one that I just got obsessed over getting because I went to my neighbor's house, a different neighbor, and played Sonic Adventure for the first time. And this was what, like 5 years after I had last played like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So, my Sonic fandom was dormant at the time. And I was like, oh my God, he's back. It's back. Like, cause Saturn came out without a Sonic game, really, like a real Sonic game. Sega CD was really like the last true Sonic game, it felt like, or Sonic and Knuckles was really the last true Sonic game. It felt like because like Sonic Extreme on Saturn got canceled, and there was nothing on 32X had Knuckles Chaotix, which I was desperate to own as well, and I never ended up buying it because it was so expensive, and you had to own like you basically had to perform surgery on your Genesis to get that thing to work. So I
Oh
ended
my
up never
word.
buying a Sega CD or a Sega 32X. But yeah, so the Dreamcast was one of those that like I was like in love with Sonic Adventure 2. Early on I got Virtua Tennis, which actually got me into tennis. Like I had never picked up a tennis racket
Interesting.
before,
Yeah.
and I played Virtua Tennis and I learned how to play tennis from that. And then years later in high school I used to play baseball, and I sprained my ankle right before tryouts one year, and I missed that entire year because tryouts I didn't make the team obviously
Yeah.
because I couldn't try out. Uh, so the next year I played tennis, and I'd never picked up a tennis racket before tryouts, and I just operated 100% off of the knowledge that I had from Virtua Tennis and Mario Tennis,
That's so
and
crazy.
I made the team, and
I
so
like it.
yeah, so there's Dreamcast, then PS2. And I got an original Xbox when I went to college, and that unlocked. Well, I played Halo 1 on PC actually, because I
Okay,
was like,
same here. Yeah.
I'm not going to buy a system just for one game was my mindset. And then I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for Halo 2 to come to PC, and they kept saying, "Oh, it's coming, it's coming." And I think I destroyed one of my PCs trying to find like I searched like Halo 2 PC, and I saw like a link like
Oh
download
no.
Halo 2 PC, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's out. Okay, I'll just get it from here." And yeah, I think
Oh,
I destroyed my PC because
I
I
can
was
relate.
not like was not tuned into like gaming culture. I was just like, oh, it's out. Okay, then I guess I can just get it from here. And yeah, it didn't
Oh
do
no.
so well for my laptop or whatever I was playing it
Shoot.
on.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so eventually I was like, all right, I'm going to college. I'm going to buy an Xbox like for college because everybody's playing Halo 2. And we just had the most intense nights of multiplayer because like we
Yes.
couldn't access outside internet using our game consoles. So we
Hmm.
just had to play with other people on campus. Like it was just a
Yeah.
giant network because, this was 2005. It wasn't like 2019 where everybody has high speed internet. It was like this was the fastest internet I'd ever had. And I think I was getting like 5 megabytes per second. And I was just blown away by how fast the internet was. And so yeah, we had like just intense matches well into the morning hours, and
Yes.
that was my obsession with Halo. And then Xbox 360 came, and I remember I was playing like Forza 2 on original Xbox over summer break back home with my parents, and my dad looked at that because I was talking about getting an Xbox 360 at that point, and he was like, I don't understand how a game would ever look better than this. And because like racing games they always look better than everything else because like
Yeah.
you're driving through an environment so it looks like super crisp. So
Hmm.
as long as the car looks good, like most everything else looks good. But if you stop and look, like you're like, oh yeah, that sidewalk doesn't look very good, or those people are just like cardboard cutouts. But yeah, racing games always look so good that he was like, yeah, how would a game ever look better than this? And then I got the Xbox 360, and now like I said, he's playing PS4, so he definitely has come to understand that games look better than they did in 2006 or whenever,
Yeah, I mean, I can
2007.
relate to that though, because it's like every generation, it's like, wait, okay, this is the most realistic it's gonna get, and
Oh,
then
100%.
the next
Yeah.
generation, it's like, how the hell did they do this? Like, how
They've
are
done
they
it
gonna
again, those bastards.
exactly? Like they keep making it more realistic somehow. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I guess from there, it just, it was more just keeping up with the latest technology. I was like, you know what? I am all in on this. I am just
Yeah,
going to keep buying whatever the latest and greatest is. This is such a big part of my life. I want to continue to have like the best experience with this. Um, so I went through 7 Xbox 360s because I never got a red ring, but like it was everything from all right, it's not reading discs anymore to it's not displaying the color blue anymore,
oh
which
my
was the
word.
oddest failure I had.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I went through multiple Xbox 360s, and the Xbox 360 is also where I remember I wanted Guitar
Hmm.
Hero 2, because I didn't have my PS2 anymore when Guitar Hero 1 came out. So I was like, all right, Guitar Hero 2 is coming to Xbox 360. I'm gonna buy that. And I remember you had to buy you had to have the guitar controller, and that was the only way you could buy the game. Was I think it was like $100 or $80 or something for the game and the guitar controller. And as a sophomore in college, you're not rolling in the dough. So I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, because I was like bent on buying this, and my girlfriend at the time goes, "Why would you spend all that money on a controller that you can only use for one game?" And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Like I guess that is a waste of money, and I just didn't get it. And then my mom, I think it was Easter. I couldn't make it home, and she was like, "I'm going to send you an Easter basket." I'm like, "All right, yeah, whatever. It's going to have like some Snickers in it or something." And it arrived, and it was just a box, and I opened it up. It was Guitar Hero 2 because she knew how bad I wanted it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
that was the surprise for Easter that year, and I remember plugging it in, and I would play it. I was just obsessed with that now. Like I know I've used that word obsessed a lot, but like that's really like the story of my
Yeah,
gaming life, is just like moving from obsessions and like things that consume my all my free time. But I
sure.
don't think
So
to that point. Okay, go ahead.
no, no, no. Please keep talking.
I don't think any game to that point had ever consumed my every free moment, every free thought that I had, like Guitar Hero did. And I just, I started playing on medium, and then moved to hard, and then moved to expert. And my girlfriend at the time, who said, I don't think you should buy this, also got like just crazy about it, and
Nice.
like became like dedicated to getting good at Guitar Hero as well. And yeah, I at one point I was like one of the top players. I mean, that's the only game I've ever played competitively.
Really? That's so
Yeah,
cool.
and I've won like hundreds of dollars playing it. Like it was never like any like national scale, but like I
Yeah.
for a while there I was dominating the Salisbury, Maryland local competitive scene and like going around to all the tournaments that places were holding, and like game stores around the city were holding tournaments. I'd go and I'd like win a free copy of Guitar Hero Aerosmith when that was coming out, or I'd win like a gift card to somewhere, or like I'd win like a cash prize. Like I remember I won the full band kit of Guitar Hero World Tour uh, using in like a Guitar Hero 3 tournament,
That's
and
awesome.
that was like a like $200 value, so that was really cool. And then I also won like the spin-off tournament for that, which was another $100. So it's like I
That's so
was I
cool.
was pretty serious about it for a while there. I don't play it very much anymore, but mostly, Rock Band was a blast. And I remember I got to um, my first event I ever did, because around that time I was also starting to write about music and video games that I had
Mhm.
mentioned before. That was right around that time that I started up that, and I my very first event that I ever went to in the industry was PAX East,
Mhm.
and that's held in Boston, which is where Harmonix, the developer of originally Guitar Hero, and then they moved on to Rock Band once Activision purchased the Guitar Hero property.
Mhm.
They moved on to Rock Band because Activision wanted Neversoft to develop Guitar Hero. And I remember I went to PAX East and I went to a show with a guy who ran a Rock Band fan site, and we were there. Like we went to a music performance. Like it was like a concert at like this kind of dive bar. And he leaned in. He's like, "Hey, don't look now, but Alex Rigopoulos, who's one of the like head guys at Harmonix, is standing like 3 people over from you." Because like that's the thing about Harmonix is there's so many like musicians and music fans, like all like the old school Harmonix people, and a lot of like the current Harmonix people are musicians also. Like they all
Yeah.
play in bands. Like if you play any old school Guitar Hero game or Rock Band game, most of the bonus songs are actually Harmonix bands.
I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah,
super
like
cool. Huh.
Guitar Hero 2, aside from like the All That Remains song and the Buckethead song, like I think all the other songs are bands that have at least one member of Harmonix in them.
So cool.
And like I think they've carried that on with a lot of the Rock Band titles and the bonus songs in those as well. So they all like love music and everything. So it was really cool. And I just went up and talked to him, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then I think we went out, not with him, but like other Harmonix people. We went out and did karaoke one night, and I was just like, I'm a new person in the industry. I'm like, oh my god, this is incredible! Like this is my favorite thing ever. And like that was, I think, when I really knew that like that's what I wanted to pursue with my career. I think this was PAX East 2011. Um, so that's when I graduated college in 2009, and I was like, I'd like to write if I could, like about something that I love. And I was thinking
Yeah.
maybe music would probably be the easier route, but that was when I was like, all right, I think it's video games. Um, so yeah, we came full circle there.
So, what does it look like for you today? What does gaming look like for you today? So, you're obviously playing video games for your work,
Hmm.
whether you're reviewing something or just writing another sort of article about it. But what's it look like to play in your free time? Because you're mentioning this word obsessed a lot, where you're filling up your free time with these things you're obsessed with. So, like, what does gaming look like for you when you do have that free time?
It's weird because when I joined Game Informer, 'cause before Game Informer, when I was working a job that I hated, gaming and writing about gaming was my break from this job, and like having to think about the job and having to think of, oh my god, I have to go back tomorrow morning too. Like I'd come home. Usually my routine was I would come home, I would start cooking dinner. I would either I would pour myself a glass of whiskey, or I'd grab a beer and I would play a review game, or I would sit down and I would write. And usually I would write pretty much up until 1 hour before I'm going to go to bed, and then I would just watch TV or
Hmm.
play a game for fun for that last hour before I go to bed, and then do it all over. And I thought when I joined Game Informer, it'd be like, all right, well, I'm not going to want to play video games when I come home because I'm going to be playing and talking and writing about video games all day for work.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to get back into guitar. I'm going to either relearn French because I was almost fluent at one point. Now I barely know anything. It's like I'm going to get back in. I'm going to relearn French. I'm going to teach myself Japanese or something, get
Hmm.
back into comic books, which I've done better with that than I have with any other aspiration that I had. But it was so new. I would go to work and I'd come home and I'd be like, oh wow, I can play these games that like we get early and everything, which I got early games before, so that wasn't super new. I think the first game I ever got before release, back when I was writing for like really small sites, was Alan Wake, and that was cool. So like I'm used to getting early games, but like it's more accessible through Game Informer just because like I didn't have to
Totally.
fight and claw my way to getting it, because like when you run a smaller site, working with PR people and trying to like build that relationship and establish your name and be like, yes, I'm somebody who, it would make sense to give me an early copy because I provide like valuable insight or valuable coverage for this game, and that's the reason why like I have an audience that wants to hear my thoughts on this game.
Brian, you're speaking my language right now.
Yeah,
I completely understand that. Yeah.
it's a hustle. It's a constant hustle when you're doing that, and
Yeah.
like we still have to reach out and talk to PR people, but like we're a known quantity at this point, and it's a different kind of conversation usually
Hmm.
when we're discussing about like getting access to a game beforehand. So at first I was like, oh yeah, I'm just I haven't really gotten burned out by gaming, so I'm playing these games morning, at work, and then back home when I'm there like in the evening,
Hmm.
and I'm like, oh, this will trail off eventually, and then I've been there almost 5 years and I still come home every night and I look forward to playing games, and it's like
Yeah.
I never got back into guitar, I never retaught myself French, I never made it through like the first 5 minutes of Duolingo for Japanese. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like I said, I've gotten better about like reading comics again, which was nice. I think actually, funnily enough, I think Spider-Man on PS4 really kind of pushed me over the edge of like, I'm going to subscribe to Marvel Unlimited and get back into comics. Like I really
Yeah.
miss like this hobby. So it's stuff like that, and like it really solidified that like I'm in the right place. Like there are places, there are industries and hobbies that like come and go in your life, but like gaming has been as close to ever present in my life as anything else. Like I've talked about like my passion for UFC and like watching that and like how that kind of came and went, and with like the availability of me having access to a pay-per-view, and like I don't see
Hmm.
myself falling out of UFC or MMA fandom anytime soon. Like I that's the thing is like when I'm driving to and from work, I'm listening to an MMA podcast. I'm not listening to like gaming or anything like that. Like I'm
Yeah.
listening to MMA stuff. But in any time where like I have like free time, I'm playing video games. I'm thinking about video games, and that's been the case for the vast majority of my life. I Ever since I picked up that NES controller and played Super Mario Brothers in my my aunt and uncle's basement, that's been the case, and it hasn't changed. There's been lulls where it's like, there's nothing I really feel like playing right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's like when I travel, like I've been traveling constantly this year. I've literally been all over the world. I mean, there's
You were just in Japan for the most recent story for Game
yeah,
Informer.
yeah. I've been to So this year alone, I've been for both work and fun. I've been to Finland, uh, several cities throughout the U.S., from Atlanta to New York to San Francisco to L.A., obviously for E3.
Hmm.
Um, and then so Finland, Cologne, Germany for Gamescom, Tokyo for the Pokemon cover story, and then I went to Florida for a vacation. I went to Bermuda and two islands on the Bahamas. So yeah, I've been all over the place this year. But it's always the thing that like the first thing that I pack is my Switch or my
Hmm.
Vita or my 3DS or my Game Boy Advance, whatever the system is at that time. That's like the thing that if I don't remember anything else, that's the thing I need to remember, because I will go crazy if I don't have some sort of like way to game.
Yeah, that's super cool hearing that you've had such a confirmation about like, okay, I'm in the right industry. This speaks to me both at work and in my off time. That's something I'm kind of trying to work through because I'm trying to move out of an industry into into something like gaming because that interests me so much more. But there's always kind of that voice in the back of your head that's like, okay, once you get there, is it just like grass is always greener type thing where you're going to get bored of it or get tired of it? But that's cool to hear that you made it there, and it's even more confirmation that it was the right choice to kind of grind out all those years of free work and all that sort of stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool.
Yeah, and there's always days, like, no matter how much you love your job, and I love my job infinitely. Like, there's always days where you have a bad day at work, or you're in a bad mood, or something happens that makes you upset, and it's important no matter what to always put things in perspective with that. Like, you don't want to have a bad day. You have to, like, and just be like, oh well, obviously I hate my job. It's like, no, I still adore my job. It's just, if I put things in perspective, it's like, oh, a bad day in this job is so much better than like the best day that I had in my other jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you get bullied by, Ben Hansen and Leo in the booth, you're still okay after those days. It's
Oh,
not.
those guys are the best. No, seriously, like, yeah, like, we have like the podcast, the Game Informer Show podcast. Like, it's so much fun to be on that show. Like, I would do it every week if I could.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, am I playing something that we need to talk about? Which, this week it was all about the Pokemon cover story, which I wrote. So it was important for me to be on there. Or do I have the time because I have other responsibilities outside of the
Hmm.
podcast. But yeah, I would do that podcast every single week if I could.
That's awesome. So I have we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but the question is, what has been one of the most influential games for you, and how has it changed who you are as a person? And I know you've already mentioned multiple series and games that have been like the standout games for you, but I
Yeah.
guess if you were to choose one, how has it changed who you are as a person?
Super Mario Brothers was probably the closest example to that, just because of, I would attribute that as the game that made me a gamer.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of started this lifelong passion for video games, and which obviously blossomed into a career and my number one hobby and all that other stuff. Ocarina of Time is another huge one for me.
What is it with Ocarina of Time that just clicked and was like, this is amazing?
I think it was just an adventure on a scale that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
It was not just, okay, well, you're going between two time periods, there's all these dungeons, but like, the first time you walk out into Hyrule Field, and
Hmm.
not as somebody going back today to play it for the first time. I'm talking like, you're in the 90s playing this game. It felt endless. Like, it felt like, oh my god, this is impossible that they made this game. Like, Hyrule Field in the 90s in Ocarina of Time was just the biggest mind-blowing moment of my life, I think, where it was just like,
Yeah.
I mean, just maybe the biggest mind-blowing moment of the N64 outside of the first time seeing Mario in 3D. Like, seeing him jump out of that pipe in the very beginning of Mario 64. Just exiting your village and going into the big, like, hub world, essentially, which is what it amounts to today. It felt so intense and so endless in its possibilities of what could be out there. And like, games like A Link to the Past had that quality where it was like, all right, what am I going to encounter next? What's the next dungeon going to bring me? Which Ocarina of Time carried that on, but it also brought about that, just the sense of wonder that I'd never felt before in a video game.
Was
And
that
that,
what's Sorry, keep going.
I was just saying, that's something that Breath of the Wild
I
really
was Yeah.
recaptured for me. Yeah, it that's, I think, the number one reason that I fell so hard for Breath of the Wild when that came out,
Yeah.
was that it provided a sense of wonder unlike any feeling I've had since Ocarina of Time for the first time in what, 98. So I think that's why Breath of the Wild resonated with me so much, was that it recaptured that feeling that I thought was gone forever.
That totally makes sense. I was literally about to ask you that because it's like when you're saying you went into Hyrule Field and it just felt endless. That
Hmm.
that kind of is the feeling you get when you go into Breath of the Wild and you just look out over the map and it's like this just keeps going and keeps going.
It really
And
does, and it feels like they're paying homage to that.
yeah, totally.
And I think they did it effectively. And I'm really, really interested in whatever Breath of the Wild sequel brings, because
Hmm.
before, like, we were like, oh, there's around the office, we're like, there's no way there's like a sequel. Maybe they do like a Majora's Mask style thing where they use a lot of the same assets, but there's no way they do a sequel, right? They haven't done like multiple Zelda games on the same system since GameCube, really,
Yeah,
with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I guess you could count Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess on the Wii, but like, Wii U barely got one, and it was just Breath of the Wild. So,
yeah,
and then
exactly.
HD ports of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So it's just like, yeah, there's no way they're gonna do, like, these Zelda games take so long to make now. There's no way they're gonna do another one before like Switch 2 or whatever it ends up being called comes out.
Totally.
You know, 5 years
Switch
down the
you.
road, or
Yeah.
whenever, however long it happens. Yeah, Switch U. God, what a nightmare that would be. Um,
Yep.
so, but I kept saying, like, if they did something, I don't care if they just re-release Breath of the Wild, but like a Master Quest where everything in the big open area is just in a different place, or like the
Hmm.
mountains are rearranged or the towns are different. Like, if they just re-release the exact same story, I don't care. Just make everything in the world a different location, or terraform it in a different way. I would
Yeah,
be perfectly fine with that. So the fact
totally.
that we're getting because, yeah, that, like, the exploration is the biggest thing for me in that game, is like, oh, I don't know what's at the top of this mountain, but I bet it's something cool and interesting and I'm gonna love it. And I get up there, and 9 times out of 10 it is something worthwhile, or it's like a super cool nod to like another Zelda game. And
Hmm.
it's that was the kind of thing that I loved about Breath of the Wild. And if they could just provide that, I'd be happy. Like, more of that, because it's like I feel like I've explored every corner of the world. And I haven't, although, full disclosure, I haven't played the DLC because I just haven't gotten to it. But and I actually think the dungeons are the weakest part of Breath of the Wild. Um,
Interesting.
so the fact that we're getting an all new Breath of the Wild game, or at least a sequel to Breath of the Wild, I don't know if it's going to be called Breath of the Wild 2, but the fact that we're getting another game in that world, and there's a chance, there's a narrative reason, it appears, that they're going to change the world
Yeah,
and make it so it's a new exploration, and recapture that feeling, is just amazing to me. Like, I can't wait to figure out what that game is going to be. And it looks like Ganondorf's going to be the big bad, which is awesome.
yeah.
Like Calamity Ganon was awesome, but I would love a more personal
Hmm.
antagonist, like Wind Waker, like where he just kept appearing, and you kept seeing these interactions with him, and like these scenes where like a character, or like Twilight Princess does a good job with that as well, or Ocarina of Time, where like any game where Ganondorf's in it, you have a better connection to that character than just Beast Ganon.
Totally.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do with that as well.
I completely agree. So, Brian, we've come to the most important question of the show.
Uh-oh.
This is this is where you get to create your dream mashup game. So, I'm going to give you a few categories and you have to choose a specific thing for each category to create the game, because right now I have Nintendo and Microsoft on the line. They're waiting to hear your pitch. So, you have to you have to give me a character, a weapon, a location, a genre, and a soundtrack, and make your own amalgamation of a game.
So we're talking like a game, like
Yeah,
a soundtrack from a game.
yes, yes.
Oh man,
You can also reach out into comic book lore if you want, or a
hmm.
character from that too. But we'll start with character. Who would you choose
Character.
as your protagonist?
Oh man, I would probably go. I mean, this is going to be such a hacky answer given my entire spiel about the Zelda games. I'd probably go Link, just because I
Okay.
like the silent protagonist. I like his kind of like cyclical journey that you take him on every single time, from like a small town boy all the way up to the hero of legend. I like that that story, even though it's been told a million times in a million different ways. I think that it's always. I mean, there's a reason they keep going back to that well, and I know he's not like the best protagonist. Like he's never going to win an award for like, oh, this is like the greatest protagonist in gaming this year.
Hmm.
But I there's something timeless and something all purpose about that.
Absolutely. So what weapon would he be holding? And it doesn't just have to
This
be a
the
random
answer
club that
may
he
shock
finds.
you. Well, I mean, if you have Link, you have to have the Master Sword, and it's always fun to control the Master Sword. Like, and until you get the Master Sword in any Zelda game, it's like, all right, what are we even doing here? Like, and even in Ocarina of Time, like having like the hammer isn't as fun. It's a nice change of pace, and like Breath of the Wild, like it's fun experimenting with the different weapons, but you always want to have the Master Sword in that game,
Yeah,
which is why
that's
they
fair.
put a time limit on it or a usage limit.
Okay, so let's just say the Master Sword is like it's a given. You're going to, but you can't start with it. You're going to find
Okay,
the Master Sword, but you have to choose another weapon, and it can't be
a sword.
a sword well, no, it can be a sword, but it can't be the Master Sword because you're going to find that in your journey.
Okay. Well, I really like a game with good bow and arrow gameplay, which I think that the Zelda series is getting better about bow and arrow gameplay.
Hmm.
But a game like Horizon Zero Dawn or Tomb Raider has just so much better like archery
Yeah,
play, I guess, if you want to, if that's a phrase that I can use instead of gunplay,
the
archery
archery
play.
play. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that a bow and arrow is great, and that also fits in with Link. But if you want like a melee weapon, I like those curved blades in Breath of the Wild a lot. And any
Okay,
game that
yeah,
has
those
like
are cool.
a curved blade always feels very versatile, and you feel agile with it. And I like, I don't know, in games where you have melee combat or like hand to hand combat, I always opt for like the more agile
Yeah,
options.
speedier. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, like tanking options are great. Like all right, I have a two handed sword or a hammer or a big heavy mace. Those are fun for like a little bit, but I like having the versatility of a faster weapon where I can jump in, get a couple slashes in, roll out, and then like jump around them and get them in the back or counter their attack.
more of like a rogue type play style. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I guess that.
Okay. Yeah. So where would this game be set? And
Oh
it
man,
can be
I've really cornered myself with the Link thing, didn't I? It can't be Hyrule.
it can't be Hyrule. I was just talking with Nintendo and they're getting worried that you're starting to infringe on the copyright. So
Well, I thought they were waiting on the line for the game.
Well,
um,
so where would this game be set?
let's see. It's funny because whenever there's a Zelda game that's not in Hyrule, I don't like it as much. So that's the that's the other thing. Um, so you know what? Let's. Oh man, because most characters. I was thinking like I could choose a different character to make this less obvious for all these, because like then the obvious answer for soundtrack is all right, something by Koji Kondo.
That's fair. Yeah. It's up to you. If
Man,
you can totally keep Link. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, this game is it's very serious that we get this right, but
yeah,
it's
obviously.
it's up
You know
to you
what?
what you want to do.
Let's do. I'm gonna do Tracer from Overwatch as my character,
Okay,
which of course keeps her weapons because that's one and the same when you're in Overwatch. So
that's fair.
that'll keep those, but let's put her in a different style game.
Okay.
Let's because I really like the gameplay of Tracer. It goes back to like liking the agile characters.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put her in a big open world. I don't know where this open world is. Let's put her in an open world
Okay.
where she's running around exploring. She can dash like she does in the game. She can recall if like you make a mistake.
Yeah,
Like so if you fall off the cliff, you can just blink back and be right where you were.
that'd be really nice.
Yeah, so I don't know where the open world is. Let's, because I just got back from there and I loved it. Let's go with Tokyo.
That would be interesting. So like City Tokyo,
Yeah, let's do
like
city Tokyo, but
okay,
there's areas in the countryside where you can go explore as well if there's something out there.
okay. And what would the genre of this game be?
I'm gonna say third person action.
Third person action.
Yeah.
And what would be your soundtrack to round out this experience?
You know what? Again, because I was just out there, let's get Junichi Masuda to compose it.
I like it.
He was the composer of the first few Pokemon games. He still does composition work, but now he's moved more of like a producer director role in the series.
So are you thinking like a 16-bit soundtrack, or
No, I'm
you
thinking
think
think about like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, like
okay.
how they modernized it. Like I want that
Yeah.
style.
Okay. That would
Like
be
not
really cool.
necessarily a Pokemon game, but like something that I feel like if you're going to have a game in Tokyo, it helps to have somebody who lives there and works there,
Yeah.
so they know the vibe of the city. And I mean, the first Pokemon games were based in Kanto, which is based off of Tokyo, so
Yeah.
or Japan in general, I think. So
Yeah, it makes sense to have
I
that.
think that he'd be able to capture the vibe.
Cool. Well, I
Or
will
wait.
okay.
As much as I like
Okay.
Junichi Masuda, nothing captures the vibe of Tokyo like the Persona team.
Okay, that's fair.
So I want the soundtrack team, including Lynn, the singer from Persona 5, to make an all new soundtrack for this open world game based in Tokyo.
I feel like you have a lot of people on board for your game.
All
Like
right.
you're bringing in a lot of fandoms right now.
We got
Persona,
Persona, we got
Overwatch.
Overwatch, and we got Japan. So
Yep. I like it. I will talk with Blizzard and make sure they're on board with Tracer in this, but I think we're I think we're able to
also
go
it
forward
would
with it.
fulfill like a dream that I have of like a story based Overwatch game.
That I would love to see them do some spin-offs of those characters.
For sure. I mean, like the CGI shorts that they do are unbelievable. The comics are super fun, even though they've kind of trailed off. All the lore stuff is super interesting to me, and like the PVE events that they do, I think like 3 times a year, they're always fun.
Totally.
I'd love to see a game, even if it's not Overwatch style. I'd love to see a game with a greater emphasis on the lore of that world, because there's definitely mining to do in that world.
It's a lot to dig into. So now that we're getting close to kind of wrapping up, I've actually taken a lot of inspiration from the Game Informer show with the rapid fire interviews. I like
Oh
the
boy.
format. I like the format. I like the quick pace. And as someone who just said you like these quick battles where you're using a sword and jumping in and out, I think these sort of questions would be perfect for you. So are you game for a quick rapid fire interview, Brian?
Sure thing.
So, first question we're starting out with: what genre of games can you not seem to get good at?
Oh man. Um, at a top level, like top competitive level, I would say fighting games. Even though I love them
Mm-hmm.
and I've played them since before I even owned one on SNES when I had Street Fighter 2
Mm-hmm.
Turbo. That was the first fighting game I ever owned, but I just can't get to like that top level where like I'm even the best player in my friends. Like
Yeah.
it's tough. But as far as like games I can't get into, which would also qualify, I can't get into a game, I can't get good at it, I would say MOBAs.
Okay. I was up with you in the whole fighting game thing, but I do play League, so okay,
I
that
want
makes
to
sense
learn
though.
League. I really do. Like I tried Heroes and I didn't really like it. And I know Heroes isn't really around anymore, or it's being phased out. I don't know if it's quite phased out just yet, but I would like to learn League. So I'm gonna really try that sometime.
Do it. What is your go-to cocktail order? Like if you don't want to look at the menu, what would you choose?
Old fashioned. If I don't have confidence that an old fashioned is a good idea at that particular establishment, I'll do a whiskey sour. If I don't think a whiskey sour is even obtainable at that place because it's that much of a dive bar, I'm just going to go Jack and Coke.
That's fair. What is one gaming pet peeve that you have?
Oh man, you mean like in a
Like
game,
it
like
could be anything. Like if someone's holding the two outside handles of the N64 controller,
oh
that
man,
could be a gaming pet peeve. It's up to you.
in game, I would say when you're walking alongside a character, like an NPC is like, "Hey, follow me," and you don't walk at the same speed as them, and you
Oh
keep
my
walking past
gosh.
them and having to stop and then wait for them to pass you and then walk with them again.
Yes.
Uh, Outside of gaming, I would say just being a dick online. Like, what are you even doing? Like that's in gaming and out of gaming. I would say that is the case because like we're all in this together, man. Just
That's
be
more than a
cool.
pet peeve. Just be nice to
Yeah.
people.
But
Yeah.
like playing Overwatch and like, all right, we didn't do well this match, and then suddenly somebody starts spamming thanks every time they die. It's like, all right, we
Yeah.
get it.
I will warn you if you get into League, welcome to more toxicity. Anyways, um what is one of your favorite countries that you visited, and quickly why?
I mean, I loved Finland, but I would have to go Japan. Japan was
Yeah.
just so great. Like the gaming culture is so palpable over there. Like
Mm.
the arcade scene is alive and well. There's just nerdy stuff everywhere. Like, you know, you walk down the street and there's Sega signs, there's Sonic the Hedgehog, there's Mario, there's Pokemon, there's everything. Like there's capsule toys that you can buy, which are great. Just the vibe of that place is so great. Like I said this, like I was only there for like 3.5 days, but I was like, I could totally live here.
That's awesome. It's like a gaming mecca.
It really is.
So, do you read the entirety of the Game Informer magazine every month?
I have to because I'm in charge of the digital magazine, so I have to put it. I have to proof it multiple times
Okay,
from cover to cover,
that makes sense.
and then we all proof the magazine before it goes to print. So we have to have multiple signatures on black and white. Then we send it back with the changes that we make, and then they print it out in color, and then we do more proofs. So over the course of that, I would say I read maybe 60% of the magazine during that
Gotcha.
process, and then when it gets to digital proofing, I go through the entire issue multiple times.
Cool. That's actually very informative.
But once we actually get the copies, like the print final copies in, like around the time the subscribers are getting theirs, I
Hmm.
thumb through it a couple times. Maybe I don't
Yeah,
read
you pretty
everything.
much already read it.
It's
Read it
just
all. Yeah.
it's cool to see the stuff actually in a magazine because they're individual pages when we're proofing them.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate your excitement for Death Stranding.
6,
10 being the highest.
6. And it's not because I think it's going to be bad. It's just because I still don't know what it is.
I feel
And I'm looking forward to playing it and like uncovering what Kojima seems to be calling a brand new genre.
Hmm.
So, I mean, he's a visionary, so I'll take his word for it that he's found something new and unique here. But I just don't know if it's going to be for me.
Do you want to go back and change your game to a Strand game? Would that be better?
I do not,
Okay.
because I still don't know what the hell that means.
That's
And
fair.
in order to make a game, I would have to understand the genre, I feel like.
Probably. If you could become a permanent host on any podcast apart from the GI show, which one would you choose?
Oh, man. Honestly, it would probably be one of the MMA shows I listen to. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I love dissecting the fights with people who watch it, and I love listening to experts dissect it
Hmm.
to the point where I subscribe to like 6 or 7 MMA podcasts.
Yeah.
My biggest concern would be like I don't know if I'd ever be able to do it as well as the MMA journalists that do it right now
Hmm.
do, because they're so insightful that, and it's that knowledge that only comes with years and years and years of doing what I'm doing in the game industry space, only in the MMA space.
That makes sense. Are you more of a Dan Tack or a Dan Reichert, and why?
Oh my god, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum. I'd like to think I'm somewhere in between.
Okay. Which way are you leaning toward?
Probably more Dan Reichert, to be honest.
Okay. Why would you say that?
I, I don't know. I think he's a goofier guy, and it's funny because I actually met them around the same time. Those were actually the two Game Informer employees that I met first.
Really?
Those
That's
two.
awesome.
I met Dan Reichert, I think, at PAX East 2011, my very first event, and I met Dan probably a year before he joined Game Informer, and uh, yeah, I think that I mean I'm really good friends with both of them, and I love both of them. But I think that I'm probably a little more on the goofy side once you get to know me.
What is one of the biggest misconceptions about working in the games industry?
I think it's just that you play games all the time. Like it's like I tell people, oh, I'm an editor at Game Informer. Oh, so you just play games all day? No, not really. That doesn't get the magazine out the door, or that doesn't get our website updated. Yeah, I mean, we play games for sure. Like I spent most of my day today playing ukulele in the Impossible Lair because it's a game I'm reviewing or playing for coverage, but I just haven't gotten to it because I've been handling the cover story stuff and
Hmm.
everything. But yeah, so like I spent most of today playing it, but like I had to stop and do other things, and like, and the reason that I haven't gotten a review up for it is because, like I said, I had other duties.
Yeah.
So so it's the idea that we play video games all day, and I think that's not a very common thought in the informed
Yeah.
circles, but
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest
It's
misconception.
just like someone who's not tuned into the games industry at all. They're like, oh, those
Yeah, like
guys
if I
just play
talk to
all the
like my
time.
parents'
Yeah,
friends,
that
yeah,
makes sense.
like my parents, yeah, they're like, oh, so yeah, you just play video games all day, right? I'm like,
Eh,
yeah, not
not
quite.
quite. Yeah. What is one cool or weird thing about Minneapolis that most people don't know?
The summers are actually very nice. You hear about Minneapolis and you think about like, the godforsaken winters, which are absolutely awful. And it's almost like how when you have a job that you hate and it's so bad
Mm,
it ruins Sunday night
yeah.
or most of Sunday, and you're just like dreading going to work on Monday morning. That's what the winters do to fall here. Where like I usually love autumn,
Hmm.
and I love like light to like medium jacket season and beanie season, but like there's always that sense of dread. Like it's almost like the early seasons of Game of Thrones where it's like winter is coming. It's like, oh god, it
Yeah,
is.
you guys get so
It
much
don't
snow,
remind me.
so much snow
Get a
and
lot of snow.
cold.
We get so
Yeah.
cold. Like uh we had one week last winter where it was so cold it wasn't safe to drive just because
Uh,
the exhaust, like they salted the roads and everything, but it was so cold that the salt or the salt solution that they do wasn't effective, and also on top of that the exhaust of the cars like dripped off and would freeze on the
oh
roads.
my word, that sounds horrid.
So but the summers almost make up for it. They're that nice.
Is it true that there's a ton of mosquitoes? That's what I've heard. I've been there once, but I didn't have that.
In the dead of summer, I mean, because there's so many lakes. There's literally, I think, 12 to 13,000 lakes across the
Jeez.
state. And it's funny because you hear the name of it's called the Land of 10,000 Lakes, and you're like, oh, that's an exaggeration. And then you look into it, it's like, no, there's actually more than that.
Crazy.
Uh, so around there's often a lot of mosquitoes, especially during summer, late spring into summer. You get a lot of mosquitoes, and like it's just be like a muggy day. So, but I don't get eaten alive or anything.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Cool. In 3 words, what is it that you appreciate the most about being in the gaming industry, or about the gaming industry, I guess?
loving my job.
That's fair. That is a super valuable thing, and that's incredible.
It really is. It's a total life changer being able to actually like your job.
Last question, where can people find you as well as the Game Informer show?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Brian P. Shea. And then Game Informer, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Game Informer. Instagram, which I actually run our Instagram account. It's Game Informer Magazine on Instagram. We have a lot of fun. We post a lot of like behind the scenes stuff that most people don't really get to see. Like I'm posting a bunch of pictures from Game Freak right now, and like when we go to a trip and like meet up with these developers, or like you get we post all these different event pictures, or pictures around our office. You get a kind of a behind the scenes look of Game Informer. So that's a lot of fun. That's always cool. I think, to even as somebody who's in the industry, I enjoy looking at it,
Yeah.
and all the stuff that we get out there. And then you can find us, of course, GameInformer.com, Game Informer magazine. We have both print and digital
Mhm.
subscriptions, and yeah, just follow us on all the social medias. And I hope you like video games because that's what we talk about.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking, an hour and a half out of your day to come on the show and talk about you and about Game Informer and all that sort of stuff. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. I really appreciate the pacing and the questions that you brought. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, man. Thanks also to the rest of you for listening to this week's Roundtable episode. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in game.